Welcome everyone back to the TD Sports Press podcast. We are back live for you guys today. We're going to have some instant reactions to the college football playoff. We're going to be looking at those games and kind of talking about my takeaways for those games. We'll also have a coaching update, a lot of coachings or update going on, a lot of coordinators switching spots, other things like that. And then we'll talk about BYU Notre Dame home and home. That's a great thing for the sport. And then I will have my group of five thoughts going into next year. So with that being said, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We are currently at 31 subscribers. We're trying to get to 50 subscribers by January. If that can happen, that'd be awesome. Just hit the subscribe button if you guys would do that. That would be awesome. So without further ado, let's get right into the coaching update. So this is as of Monday morning. Bobby Petrino is looking like he's going to be the offense coordinator at North Carolina, and that's one of the craziest things you guys don't know. Bill Belichick is currently the head coach at North Carolina. So a lot of things to unpack here. First thing was I want to talk about the actual football. His offense at Arkansas was not the problem. They couldn't get the defense going, and he's a really good offensive coach. But at the same time, he has some controversy off the field. Look why he got fired at Arkansas. You can do that on your own. There's just a lot of things going on, and we'll see if this works for Bill Belichick. Their offense was terrible. There was not a lot of things good about North Carolina's football in general, but that being number one was the offense was ranked in the hundreds in every category you could think of. So hopefully this is a good hire for North Carolina and they can get something going, because Bill Belichick, I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to last there. Moving on in the coaching search business, Michigan, there's still not a head coach at Michigan. I'm not sure what road Michigan's going to go on. There's a lot of different roads they can go on. Are they just going to get an interim coach for this year? What's that going to look like? Kalen DeVore looks like he's going to stay at Alabama. Kenny Dillingham, he signed his extension at Arizona State. Jed Fish, the Washington head coach, looks like he's out of the mix for the Michigan head coaching job. So I'm not sure what it looks like for Michigan. I don't know what names have been floated around, but it's not looking good for Michigan trying to get a coach. Maybe they just get an intern. Maybe they're a guy that they have doing their bowl game. Maybe he's the intern for 2026. I'm not sure what it looks like for Michigan, but it does not look like as of right now, they're not going to have a coach in the foreseeable future unless they have a guy in the playoff. Maybe it is DeVore. I don't think it's DeVore personally. There are still some people that think it could possibly be DeVore, so I guess we'll see if that's still going on there. Ohio University fired their head coach for the same kind of conduct Sharon Moore had. There was a lot of things to unpack with that. Ohio is a really good program in the MAC, and their head coach got fired for some things I don't want to bring up on here, but they're going to have to fire a new coach, and it looks like they're going to do that after their bowl game tomorrow. They have a couple of names in mind, so we'll definitely keep looking to see what Ohio does there. So, like I said, the coaching carousel has been absolutely crazy. So that's kind of the update. Bobby Petrino going to UNC. Looks like that's going to be a Dundale, Michigan coaching search. No one knows what's going on in Michigan currently. Who's going to hire the head coach? That's something that we haven't even talked about. Is he like the AD? There's just a lot of things to unpack in Michigan. Are they even ready to have a head coach right now? So, there's a lot of things to unpack there. So, and then obviously what we just talked about. So, with that being said, those are the coaching updates as of currently. Moving on, our first game. So we're going to start talking about the college football playoffs. And the first thing I want to say is those first two games that we watched, we're going to give full takeaways to those two games. Those two are fun to watch. I know that, we'll talk about Miami, but that wasn't high scoring. But in terms of, competitive football, it was two different type of games. So first off, we have Alabama goes on the road and beats Oklahoma 34-24. This was an absolutely crazy game. Watching this live, Oklahoma came out 17-0. It looked like it was going to be a bloodbath early on, and Alabama didn't have any answers. And what really turned the tide, there's a couple plays that John Mateer paid. And John Mateer had a great game. He threw for over 350 yards, had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he had 2 crucial mistakes, and I've been seeing this on X. There was like 3rd and 4 when he had the ball, and he threw a deep pass. And yes, if that guy makes the catch, it's a touchdown. They're up 24-0, or maybe it's 24-7. I don't remember off the top of my head. But John Mateer had a running lane. He could have just ran for that first down, kept the clock moving on. It was late in the second quarter, middle second of the quarter. So that was one play that really changed the game, as he threw that ball instead of just taking the first down. And I can understand why he did that. I mean, he wants to, take the home run shot. And it's not on John Mateer. I mean, the receiver should have caught that. So that was one play that, if, Mateer, it looks better in hindsight. If Mateer takes off and just gets the first down, we might not be, Alabama might not be playing next week. So the next play was obviously John Mateer's interception. I don't know what he was looking at. His receiver, him and his receiver definitely off course. Alabama, I think it was their nickel that got the interception in that one, or it was an outside linebacker, one of the two, but there was no one home, and that kind of turned the tide. And not enough credit to Ty Simpson has been given. He was accurate with the ball. He was a game manager. He did what he had to do. They have some good receivers there, and the thing is Ryan Williams is barely even part of the rotation in terms of like getting touches. Like, I'm not sure what happened to Ryan Williams. I think in order for Alabama to have a shot at winning a national championship, I think they're going to need a Ryan Williams, or they're going to have to get the run game going. One of those two things need to happen in order for Alabama to make a run. But moving on in the second half, Alabama dominated the third and fourth quarter. It was fun to watch. They turned the tide around. It looked like it would look like Alabama was playing Georgia in the SEC championship. It looked like it was just going to go downhill, and Alabama didn't let it go that way. You got to give hats off to that. And now they get a week and a half, which is huge, to rest. They have a lot of injuries on that defense, the offensive line. So we'll see what Alabama looks like when they play Indiana. They get another week and a half. Like I said, so there could be some moving parts for Alabama. Maybe they get back to that midseason form where they beat Georgia. So so like I said, Alabama won the game against Oklahoma. They will play in the Rose Bowl against Indiana, and that is going to be a very fun matchup. Kirk Cincinnati playing against a team that he used to work for. Obviously, Nick Saban's not coaching anymore, but he used to work for Alabama, so I'm sure it's crazy. It's also crazy to see Indiana and Alabama in a playoff game. If you would have told someone 5 years ago those two teams are going to play in the playoff, no one would probably believe you. I'd be quite honest with you. I wouldn't. So, like I said, Alabama, they need to get well rested. Kirk Cincinnati, they're going to have those boys ready. I'm excited to preview that game. That's probably going to be next week after Christmas. So, super excited, looking forward to that game. So, and then Oklahoma's takeaways for my biggest takeaway of this game for Alabama and Oklahoma is Oklahoma made too many mistakes. They couldn't replicate what they did at Alabama. They had 3 or 4 turnovers. They had that pick six, and they just couldn't replicate that. And they did for a quarter and a half, but it just wasn't enough. And Alabama, they come out and win this game, which is huge for them. And Kalen DeVore, because if Kalen DeVore would have lost that game, it would have been not a good situation for him, I'm sure. So that was an absolutely huge win for Alabama. They needed that one. Moving on to the next game here. Miami went on the road to Kyle Field and won 10-3. And I know if you guys love offense, this wasn't a great game. I love watching the defenses, the chess pieces. And it was a great defensive game. The first thing I want to talk about, we talked about winners first, but we look at Miami. My biggest takeaway from Miami, if you would have told someone last year that Miami's defense is going to win them a game, I don't think anyone would believe you. If you guys look back at last year when they had Cam Ward and all those weapons last year, they had to score 35 points in order to win a game. That's why they got beat by Georgia Tech. That's why they got beat by Syracuse. That's why they weren't in the college football playoff last year, is because they didn't have a defense. And now flash forward to Saturday, they held Texas A&M to 3 points, who was in the top 5 until they got beat by Texas last game. And the defense won the game. And, Carson Beck, he didn't make enough plays, but he made the plays he needed to down the stretch in order to win the game. It wasn't a pretty game by any things, but he was clutch when he had to. He took care of the football, which was huge. Miami, they're going to move on and play Ohio State. We'll talk about more. But now let's look at it through Texas A&M. What this looks like for Texas A&M. Texas A&M, they couldn't get anything going offensively. They had A lot of missed field goals. So did Miami. They just had a lot of missed opportunities. They have that fumble, Marcel Reed, at the end of the first quarter. That maybe they score on that drive. Who knows what happens on that drive? So, looking at Texas A&M, I think the biggest question for Texas A&M going into the offseason is Marcel Reed your quarterback? Because there's a lot of money being flowed into Texas A&M football, and I don't think they're happy with the product on offense that they saw. I don't think they like the product. So I don't know what the answer is at Texas A&M, and maybe he is your guy. But I think that's something, a conversation that needs to happen at Texas A&M over this offseason and into the transfer portal. Can they find another guy that's better than Marcel Reed? And we'll see. Texas A&M had a really good regular season thanks to the part of they played a really mediocre SEC schedule based off the teams they beat. I know people are going to say, yes, they beat Notre Dame. Yeah, they did the second week of the year, and I feel like they got worse as the year went on. Normally, as a team, you want to start in the middle, and then you want to get up here. You want to get higher. So they just were not able to do that, and they just couldn't get it done. And the end result was they got beat by Miami. Marcel Reed, he kept trying to scramble, but you gotta give credit to Miami's defense. Marcel Reed was very limited in the run game because Miami took it away. They had a spy, they had two spies. Early in the game, Marcel, that first possession, he was able to use his legs a little bit, get down, but there just wasn't enough for Texas A&M. Now let's look at Miami. Now Mario Cristobal has gotten this program. He's really turning it around. His first year they went 5-7. The next year they went 7-5, or maybe it was 6-6. Last year they went 9-3 or 10-3, and this year they are 11-2 going into Ohio State. So Mario Cristobal, the old Oregon coach, he's really turned this program around and what it looks like. So you gotta give props to Mario. So now they're gonna go play Ohio State. And based off this game, there's going to be a lot of athletes. I know this is the biggest point spread, or I'm pretty sure. But I'm excited to see matchup on matchup because the athletes at Miami, they kind of match up with Ohio State. But it's going to come down to coaching where I think, Ohio State has some good coaches. But like I said, we'll give you guys a full preview next week. But that's a game I'm really looking forward to. And just the athletes that Miami can put on them. Malachi Tony, but Carson Beck's going to have to play a better game in order to beat Ohio State. That's like the one thing that you have to have. So really looking forward to that game. So, like I said, those were the two good games of the weekend. They were fun to watch and for different reasons. So let's move on to our next topic. The last two games, I just put them under one thing. Group of 5 takeaways and thoughts. So the last two games, Ole Miss and Tulane. Ole Miss and Tulane looked exactly like it did in week 2 or week 3 when they played. It was 45-10 or 41-10. Both those games are right around there. Not surprising. It was good for Ole Miss. First game without Lane Kiffin just to go get the cobwebs out, get them ready to play Georgia. Tulane, great story. John Summerall, he's going to be a great coach at Florida, I hope. It's just at the end of the day, it's just hard to compete against, programs that have a lot bigger budget. And they just couldn't get anything going. And Ole Miss are hoping to fire on all cylinders to avenge a loss against Georgia. That should be a really that's going to be an interesting game in my opinion, what that game looks like. So we'll see what Ole Miss can. Like I said, Ole Miss was up 2 touchdowns late in the third quarter, and they gave up the lead. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to, that chess match between Georgia and Ole Miss. And could you imagine if Ole Miss beats Georgia without Lane Kiffin, how that would make Lane Kiffin feel? That would be one of the craziest things to happen. So I'm going to keep my eyes on that game. And then the next game was obviously Oregon and James Madison. It looked like a JV game out there. I mean, Oregon really did whatever they wanted to, and you guys can look at the final score or whatever. But Oregon, it was an exhibition game for them. I mean, they were just getting people in and out, just trying not to get hurt, and they beat James Madison. And yeah, that's all to it. They are going to have a great. I think that's going to be a great game. Texas Tech and Oregon will be playing in the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day. That is going to be a great game. Both programs. I think right now Oregon is -1, or it's been going back and forth. So that's going to be a fun game to preview. So the quarterfinal games, like I said, those are just your quick previews of what those look like. Like I said, in-depth one will look a little bit differently, but this should be really fun. I'm super excited to see what they look like. But my group of 5 takeaways. So when I think about the group of 5, I've had a lot of questions on this on my channel. What do I think about the group of 5 in the playoff? I think the group of 5 should always have a path to the playoff. And it's just, Yeah, I think that there should be a path to the playoff. I know there's a lot of people saying there should be no group of five teams in. I don't agree with that. I can see where they're coming from and why they want it that way. They want more interesting matchups and they want, better matchups. But I think that the group of five needs a playoff spot. You look at what Cincinnati did 3 years ago. They got into the 14 playoff. UCF, they went 11, or they went 12-0, and they didn't get an opportunity to play national championship. And then you look at like teams like Boise State, back in the late 2000s. So I think the group of fives, they should have a playoff spot. And now people are gonna say, well, they shouldn't have two spots. Well, my thing is with the group of five having two playoff spots, that's on the ACC. The ACC can't figure out their tiebreakers. The ACC has like 40 teams in it, and they had a five-way tiebreaker. They don't know how to do it. Every single conference you look at tiebreakers, one of the tiebreakers is the highest rate in the college football playoff. If they would have done that, Miami and Virginia would have played their way into the college football playoff, and the winner would have got in instead of James Madison. So, in terms of having two G5 teams in, blame the ACC. They can't figure out a tiebreak system. So I don't agree with people saying the group of five shouldn't be in. I think they should have a path in. I don't know why one spot hurts. And I'm going to say, oh, they want interesting matchups, but we'll see. We'll see what the group of five does. It's obviously a different era than it was in the early 2000s and 2010s. So I can see where they're coming from there, but yeah, I think the group of five should get a spot. But the two games on Friday and Saturday, they were both on Saturday. It was to be expected. I would say that. So I'm kind of conflicted with the group of five, like I said, but I still feel like there should be a path to the playoff. Whatever that looks like. I think there should be a path for the playoff. Maybe people disagree with that. I could see that. So moving on to our next segment we have. If you guys are still here, make sure you guys subscribe. We're at 31 subscribers, trying to hit 50 subscribers by January. That'd be awesome if you guys could help us reach that. Moving on, that was just our last segment. Transfer portal update. So like I said, the transfer portal doesn't update, or you can't enter the portal until January 2nd or whatever it is, but you can declare for the portal. So some big names this week, Rocco Beck, the quarterback from Iowa State. He is in the transfer portal. Like I said last week, it was the Arizona State quarterback, the Cincinnati quarterback, DJ Lagway's in the portal. There's a lot of quarterbacks. So like I said, the biggest one is Rocco. I could see him going to Penn State and linking back up with Matt Campbell. So we'll see if that ends up happening in the portal. There's a lot of interesting, or looking at the portal. There's a lot of people in there. There's a lot of great, weapons. So we'll see what happens like that. But Rocco was the biggest one going into the portal since the last time we filmed our last episode. So that is currently the portal update. Like I said, no one can really say where they're going until January 2nd. But they need to fix the whole college football calendar. The whole college football calendar is messed up. I think everyone in here would agree with that. So that moves us into our last segment. The biggest news, BYU, Notre Dame, home and home series. This was huge. I would say this was more huge for BYU than it was Notre Dame. The reason why Notre Dame and BYU are playing is USC and Notre Dame, that is no longer a rivalry game anymore in terms of they're not going to play each other. They're trying to get it worked out for 2030. When you looked at the article, it said that USC did not want to play Notre Dame in November because teams get, the committee values losses at the end of the season compared to the early of the season. Like you look at, so USC wanted to play Notre Dame earlier in the season, and Notre Dame wanted to play late, and it just didn't work out so they're not going to play each other. So Notre Dame picked up BYU. So Notre Dame will go to BYU in 2026, and then BYU will go to Notre Dame in 2027. This is great for college football. I feel like BYU is a team in the Big 12 that maybe they should be in the playoff. I personally didn't think they should have been based off their two losses, but this is a good chance for BYU to really show that they belong. I feel like BYU, in order to get in that exclusive club of getting into the playoff, they need to schedule, marquee non-conference games. And this is a marquee non-conference at home. So that should be a really fun game. I'm super excited to see what that game looks like. Both programs, will Marcus Freeman be on the sideline for Notre Dame? That's another question. He's currently engaged to be the New York coach. The New York Giants, he's the favorite. We'll see what happens if he stays in Notre Dame. We'll see what happens. I don't want to put words into people's mouths. So that was the biggest news. Notre Dame BYU. That should be a fun non-conference game in 2026 and 2027. Looking forward to that. So with that being said, that is the end of the episode. Our next episode, we won't be live on Christmas. We'll be back on Sunday. We'll start our quarterfinal previews on Sunday. As like I said, no episode on Thursday. You guys will see us on Sunday next week. And like I said, have a great Christmas. Thanks for everyone that's been a follower on X or on TikTok or on Spotify, YouTube, all those great things. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to keep growing. Thanks for all the things that you guys do. So this is TD Sports Press. And until next time, we will see you back here on Sunday for a quarterfinal preview.